Welcome back, everybody, to the Liberty Garden Midseason Showdown here in Iselin, New Jersey. I'm Eric Bartlett, once again joined by Brendan Lewis. And Brendan, we're finally here over the long, grueling 7 rounds of Swiss. Both days, Midseason Showdowns, 3 rounds of Top Cut each, but we still have one more match to go, and that is our finals match between Arbin Tumaneng and versus Luca Paz.
Yeah, and I think one of the big stories, if not the biggest story here, is that Arbin has made it into his second final.
That's
so
right.
Definitely the big performer of the weekend here, and he will be going up against Luca Paz. And we do have the bracket up on stream there so that you can see the paths that both of these players have forged into our second final this weekend. Of course, Arbin just taking down Nicholas Borghi in a bloodbath in the top 4 for our second top 4 match of the day. And of course, Luca with a really, really well-played set, like just a masterclass against Paul in the first top 4 match of the day today.
Yeah, having casted one of Luca's earlier matches, I can definitely see why he's made it this far. Definitely showing some exemplary play, and even in the highest intensity scenarios, both of those games that I've seen him play, both of them going to Game 3, and he just finds ways to pull himself out of these seemingly perilous situations, and he's really demonstrated how skilled he is as a player. Meanwhile, Arbin, on the other hand, going 7-0 in Swiss, going into Top Cut as the #1 seed, and repeating his trip to the finals of the second mid-season showdown. I'm really excited for this matchup.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. And as you mentioned, Luca in some of the matches on stream today had just found ways to win, sometimes by capitalizing on positions he'd gotten themselves, by others kind of wiggling out of holes. And we kind of saw, an inability to do that in our last top 4 match, where Arbin was really able to exploit the kind of matchups that Hard Trick Room forces certain teams into. And whether or not Luca has the tools to deal with that, or when he's really just going to have to play out of his mind to gain an advantage, is going to be really interesting to see, because he's definitely shown the capability of being able to play out of his mind to get through bad matchups.
Yeah, the thing about Luca's team that I really like, especially in this matchup, is that his team doesn't really have that sort of hyper offense throwing out damage. It's a very slow and calculated sort of game plan. He has Pokemon that, like Grimmsnarl, that can sort of dictate the pace of the game and also try and force certain factors into his own control, like just stacking those debuffs with Pokemon like Grimmsnarl, and just have those Pokemon like Conkeldurr that can contest a slower mode that will be coming out from a team like Arbin. So going into team preview, we have Arbin on the left here with Butterfree, Rhyperior, Torkoal, Dusclops, Hatterene, and Indeedee female. Meanwhile, on the right, we have Luca with the Conkeldurr, Durant, Arcanine, Rotom Wash, Togekiss, and Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, and I think just seeing the Arcanine on Luca's side of the field immediately puts me at ease that we won't have a repeat of our second top 4 match, because I think Arcanine alone does very well in handling the combination of Hatterene, Indeedee, and Torkoal, which was obviously the kind of big combination of 3 that Arbin utilized to take down Nick in the previous round. So having access to that really important tool will definitely, hopefully, make for a little bit more entertaining TV here in our finals match.
Yeah, Arcanine just being so powerful with that pressure, with that snarl, just being able to slow down many of the very powerful special attackers we have in this metagame. And speaking of Arcanine, we're going to see it lead right off turn 1 next to Luca's Rotom Wash. Meanwhile, Arbin going to lead with Indeedee and Dusclops.
And I think this is a really excellent lead for Luca here. With the access to Snarl, there's not even any offensive pressure on the field to begin with. And I know Anosh mentioned it a little bit about how one of the really important things about utilizing or playing a Trick Room team is making sure that you get your sweepers onto the field while they're able to use Trick Room. There are no sweepers on the field right now. So unless there's a switch, it's going to take Arbin 1 or 2 turns to get into position to threaten offense. And that we know this Rotom has Nasty Plot, it can do that for free right now.
Yeah, but Rotom on this turn just going to go for a Protect. Maybe trying to scout out some potential moves here from Arbin's side. Meanwhile, Arcanine just going to fire off a Snarl, going to weaken the special attack stats of both of these Pokemon. Probably going to be more impactful for that Indeedee, not too much for that Dusclops as its main means of damage. Nightshade is not really based on its base power and any of its stats, but Indeedee's Psychic going to go into that Arcanine. Not going to do a whole lot after that Snarl, but Dusclops remaining relatively unscathed, going to get off a Trick Room this turn. And Indeedee revealing that it is in fact, Room Service, so its speed is going to fall, making it much slower in this Trick Room.
Yeah, so that does give Indeedee the opportunity, and it actually did more damage with that Psychic than I was expecting after taking the Snarl. But I think, again, Arbin's position, not super good. You really want to maximize the use of those offensive Pokemon in Trick Room, and I think the Rhyperior is going to be the really important one for him. But of course, it is not on the field right now, so he's going to either have to switch it in or sacrifice something to get it onto the field as Will-O-Wisp from Dusclops comes out.
Yeah, Arbin not wanting to potentially risk one of his sweepers coming in, taking one of the water type attack from Rotom. Dusclops getting that Will-O-Wisp off, and Didi getting another Psychic into the Arcanine. There is the Nasty Plot, so Luca gearing up his Rotom to be even more of a threatening presence on the field. Meanwhile, Arcanine content to just keep firing off Snarls there, further lowering the Indeedee special attack and just slowly chipping away at that Dusclops.
Yeah, and at this point, now that Rotom is at +2, it seems like Luca is going to get his choice of turn to Dynamax it, whether or not he wants to do it now and utilize the offensive capabilities to try and wipe out something like Dusclops or Indeedee, or if he wants to hold on to it. But Arbin is going to be really hard-pressed to deal with this Rotom at +2.
Yeah, what I really like about Luca's game plan and how he can operate this team is he can sort of play this slow, calculated game here where he doesn't really need to start taking KOs right off the bat. He's perfectly content to just sit there with his Arcanine and keep firing off Snarls. Meanwhile, Arbin is just sitting here like, okay, please KO one of my Pokemon so I can get a free switch into one of my Trick Room sweepers. But Luca's just like, no, I don't really need to right now. But this is a big development. We see the haze coming out from Dusclops. So this Nasty Plot, this stacking of boosts here from Luca's end, he's certainly not happy to see that, as it's going to be making this Rotom not able to just sit there and stack up those special attack boosts. Meanwhile, Indeedee going for a Psychic into the Rotom. That does a ton of damage to that Rotom, even through the -2 special attack. Going to be proccing Rotom's. Oh, yeah, it was Haze, so it's going to be back up to neutral. But that special attack drop is just going to come right back with Arcanine firing off yet another Snarl.
Yeah, and we don't get to see too many opportunities where Indeedee is actually one of the offensive threats that this sort of hard Trick Room team puts out. And of course we saw a little bit yesterday in Arbin's stream match that Butterfree got to be the offensive threat for the team for a couple minutes there. But today it's Indeedee's turn and is able to actually lay down a decent amount of damage here. And while the haze is kind of frustrating because Rotom is moving second, I think at some point on the last turn of Trick Room, the haze is going to go first. He's going to get the Nasty Plot, and then the Twisted Dimensions will return to normal, allowing Rotom to at least keep the +2.
Yeah, I like that in the context of looking at Luca's position, but the problem is that Luca's not doing a whole lot of damage to this Dusclops. Sure, he's chipping away at it slowly, but with Dusclops still remaining to be healthy, like even if Trick Room runs out for Arbin at some point, if Dusclops is still at a healthy amount of HP, it will be able to get another Trick Room set up, and Indeedee's time on the field likely not going to be as long as Dusclops, meaning that he'll probably get that free switch sooner or later. But instead, we're going to see Togekiss switch in for the Arcanine as a Dynamax comes out from, is that Luca's side?
I believe so.
Okay, so this is going to be the Rotom Wash that is going to be Dynamaxing Rotom now at +2, but of course a Dusclops Haze could easily just remove all of those boosts and that special attack drop from the Indeedee. But you know, the boost in power from these Dynamax moves will not exactly counteract the wiping of the boosts, but definitely Rotom going to be threatening some big damage here as Dusclops is going to go for that Haze. Meanwhile, Rotom going for the Max Lightning into the Indeedee, going to get the knockout and going to take over the terrain with the Electric Terrain. But now Arbin has got that KO on the Indeedee, but I think at this point Trick Room is just about done, so I think it might be a little bit too late for this free switch in on Arbin's side.
Yeah, I believe there's one more turn.
Oh, right, there is one more turn.
Yeah, but he will be pressuring that Dusclops with, I think, enough damage with perhaps a crit from Togekiss using that Scope Lens or Razor Claw or what have you, followed by a max move from Rotom. I don't think Rhyperior by itself, well, it is chipped a little bit. It's going to be close to be able to knock out Rotom, but one thing that I noticed that I just wanted to call attention to is that the Haze actually took away the speed drop from Room Service.
That's right.
That allowed Rotom to move before Indeedee.
Before Indeedee. That's right.
So a lot of fun things going on with that Haze reveal here.
Yeah, so Luca this turn will likely be able to just try to stall out this last turn of Trick Room, but Arbin still has the opportunity with this Dusclops to do some sort of self-activation of weakness policy.
Bulldoze Rockfall, it could be.
Yeah, but we're going to see Arcanine switch back in here on Luca's end for that Togekiss, getting the Intimidate off on that Rhyperior. Of course, if Dusclops does want to go for that Bulldoze option, it's going to just completely negate that Intimidate drop, and that looks like we're going to see the Rhyperior Dynamaxing on Arbin's side, so Rhyperior looking to make the most out of its last Trick Room turn and try to get some big damage off here with either a Max Rockfall or I guess probably Max Rockfall would probably be the best option here considering both the Pokemon that were just in were flying. So yeah, Rhyperior just going to try to get as much damage off as possible while it still has that speed advantage. Dusclops going for the Bulldoze. Of course not going to hit the Rotom. Going to do a bit of chip damage to Arcanine. It's still a super effective hit, but of course Dusclops not the most offensively inclined Pokemon. But the real motive behind this Bulldoze play was to activate that Rhyperior's weakness policy and put it back to a single increased stage of attack. And Rhyperior now going to fight. Okay, well, first the Arcanine speed's going to fall.
Then,
yeah, it's going to chip it into very range. That's actually kind of nice for Luca.
Yeah,
I guess he doesn't really mind that too much. But Rhyperior actually going for the Max Quake into the Rotom, so potentially anticipating the Rotom to switch out maybe for the Arcanine in that case. But this allows Rotom to get a free Max Geyser into the Rhyperior. This does a ton of damage, but Rhyperior with that incredible bulk thanks to Solid Rock, able to tank that hit.
Yeah, that's a really surprising target. I'm not really sure why that was a Max Quake into Rotom. I don't think there was really any reason to expect that Luca was going to give up his last Dynamax turn. So Arbin may be reading a little bit too much into something, unless I'm completely misreading the board state. But that was the last turn of Trick Room, and now Rotom with its last turn of Dynamax here is going to get the opportunity to at least pressure Rhyperior with a Max Geyser, although he might even be better served to just try and double down into Dusclops and make sure another Trick Room doesn't go up here.
Yeah, perhaps with this Rain Boost, Rotom might be able to get this Dusclops into KO range, but this Arcanine is going to switch out, so Rotom, if it wants to KO that Dusclops, might have to do it all by itself. This Max Geyser going to be coming out from this Rotom Wash, going to target the Dusclops. How much is it going to do? Not a whole lot of damage, even with that Rain Boost. Dusclops just showing how bulky it is, and with Rhyperior not being targeted this turn, that gives it a free Max Rockfall into the Rotom, but it's just barely going to miss out on the KO. However, this is now going to bring up the Sandstorm, and with that Sandstorm chip damage plus that Burn chip, Rotom might come close to just being knocked out.
And Trick Room's going back.
Yeah, Dusclops managing to make it through the turn means Trick Room is going back up.
That's going to be problematic.
Yeah, that's going to be a very big problem for Luca.
I thought Luca had really positioned himself pretty well to be threatening offensive positions in the before Trick Room ended in the last couple turns there, and then at the very least threatening enough offense to prevent it from going back up. But maybe he did a miscalculation with the Max Geyser, but for whatever reason was unable to get enough damage out to Dusclops. And with the Trick Room going back up, even though Rhyperior is at pretty low health here, I think this is an okay position for Arbin. He might have to max guard here and get into a position where he can Rock Slide to make sure it's safe, though.
Well, since both of his Pokemon are slower, he could just... I guess since Dusclops is switching out here, he's not going to be able to just throw off a Nightshade, even if he has it. But now Torkoal is going to switch in here, going to reset the weather, going to bring in the Drought. But like you said, perhaps a Max Guard might be coming out here from the Rhyperior, just so it has the ability to just start spamming Rock Slide, just so it can get those spread hits. But Arcanine going to switch in for that Togekiss, going to get another Intimidate, putting Rhyperior back to neutral. But even Rhyperior at a neutral stage of attack stat still hits like an absolute truck. And we're going to see that truck come in here in the form of a Max Rockfall going right into that switching in Arcanine, and with that at that level of HP, Arcanine's not going to enjoy taking that, and it's going to result in a swift KO and the Sandstorm being reset, which Torkoal probably not going to like too much.
Yeah, Torkoal's not going to appreciate that, and we've seen Arbin on stream a couple of times be very cautious. Oh, as the Hydro Pump goes wide of Rhyperior.
Yeah, missing that knockout.
Cool, that is a critical miss there, and Rotom is going to faint to the residual damage, like you mentioned there. That's a really tough miss, as Luca had, I think, done enough. And I was about to mention that, depending on what he did have in the back there, could have been pretty telling for the rest of the game. But I think that Hydro Pump might seal it. I think a combination of attacks from Rhyperior and Torkoal in Trick Room is going to be enough offense to take it in favor of Arbin in Game 1.
Yeah, so Arbin even still has that extra Pokemon in the back, so if he wants to, he could just switch out that Torkoal to reset the favorable weather, so Torkoal can be in a position where if Rhyperior can't stick around for very long, it can put itself into a position where it can just start spamming its signature Eruption. Grimmsnarl does have Fake Out pressure here, but of course Rhyperior couldn't just go for a Protect, and with Trick Room still having 3 more turns, I think Arbin has more than enough time to seal up this game, since Grimmsnarl, we know from Luca's past games, is not packing anything like Reflect or Light Screen to mitigate any of the damage from Arbin's side, so I think Arbin is in a pretty good position just to clean up this game. as Dusclops going to switch in for the Torkoal. So Arbin wanting to conserve that favorable weather for the Torkoal. Going to be revealing the items on both sides here. But interesting choice not to protect the Rhyperior, but instead the fake out goes into the Dusclops, as Rhyperior is actually going to miss the Rock Slide onto the Togekiss. So Togekiss being able to get a free attack off here. That Dazzling Gleam going to be able to pick up the knockout on Rhyperior. Critical hit probably didn't matter at this state, but going to just do a little bit of chip damage to Dusclops, as Dusclops going to survive this turn.
Yeah, I think that's the safe play there. And now Torkoal gets its own weather back up. It gets to come in with the Sun, and 2 turns of Trick Room remaining while it's facing down against, 2 Pokemon that don't typically carry Protect as an option to even, stall out the last 2 turn of Trick Rooms. So I think the out here is to Thunder Wave Torkoal.
So yeah, I was just gonna say, like,
hope it doesn't move for a couple turns.
Just hoping to get like a pseudo fake out there,
right,
as a pseudo secondary fake out with that Thunder Wave. But yeah, that seems to be Luca's only out here, is if he's not able to proactively stop this Torkoal from just firing off an Eruption, and a Sun boosted Eruption from Torkoal. Oh, Sucker Punch is another option just to decrease Torkoal's HP, therefore decreasing the power of Eruption. But at this point, Togekiss is actually going to live through the turn. Grimmsnarl, unfortunately, not strong enough to take it.
Dusclops has a way to hit it, so maybe a crit Air Slash could do it.
Yeah. Dusclops just going for the Will-O-Wisp here. So yeah, like you said, like Dusclops probably not carrying a move like Nightshade that would be able to hit the Togekiss, but Togekiss instead, going for the Dazzling Gleam. Torkoal going to take that hit relatively well, and with this 2 more turns of Trick Room, I believe, Torkoal has the ability just to take the last bit of HP away from this Togekiss.
Right.
The burn won't.
Again, Protect is an out here if Togekiss is carrying it, but knowing that they don't typically carry Protect, it seems like another Eruption is going to seal the game in favor of Arbin here. But it was interesting. It seemed kind of like that game was going up and down in a couple of different scenarios. It looked like Arbin was able to get his Trick Room up for free. There's a big up for him. But then Luca was able to stall out most of the turns. Seemed like he'd positioned himself well towards the end of Trick Room number 1, but then allowed it to go back up, which really sealed his fate in the end there. So a really well played. I think it's nice to see somebody, even when the matchup might not be very favorable, put up a fight against hard Trick Room. So we'll see whether or not he's able to do the same thing in Game 2 here.
Yeah, I really liked Luca's original game plan of just kind of sitting there with Arcanine and Rotom.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, I think that was a very good opening strategy, because he was just able to play that super slow game.
It turned out Haze messed with that quite
a bit.
Oh,
yeah. Well, obviously the Haze reveal was kind of put a damper on those plans.
Right.
And I think, honestly, Luca's biggest mistake was just ignoring Dusclops, because Dusclops just being able to stick around and being able to set up Trick Room yet another time. And by that point, Luca had shifted around his pieces so much that he was just unable to really proactively deal with Arbin's second Trick Room.
Right.
So I think ignoring Dusclops was a huge mistake, and I think Luca will definitely try to devote some more attention to it in this upcoming game.
Right, and I think, it's interesting, because I think that ignoring Dusclops in a lot of scenarios is okay.
Yeah.
It's a very passive presence on the field for the most part. It becomes apparent that this one is not carrying Nightshades even threaten any sort of damage. So you're dealing with the threat of Haze and Will-O-Wisp, basically, for all intents and purposes. So it's okay to ignore it a lot of the times, depending on what sort of position you're able to generate for yourself. But you need to be targeting it down with priority, not priority moves, but prioritizing targeting it down at certain times to make sure that it can't do anything when it wants to or when it needs to. If it wants to sit there and burn your special attackers, fine, we'll let it do that. We'll let it sit there. But to prevent the Trick Room is critical, especially a second Trick Room at that point in the game.
Absolutely. So this game looking like a repeat of the first game, with Luca leading the Rotom, Wash, and the Arcanine. Meanwhile, Arbin sticking with his Indeedee and Dusclops lead from the first game.
Yeah, and Arbin looking like he can taste the championship that he was denied yesterday. He's back for more, and he wants it. But yes, we're back to the same leads here, and it seems likely that both players are going to pursue a very similar strategy. I think we'll probably see a combination of Snarls, Nasty Plots, and Psychics from Indeedee. But it's going to start off the same way it began.
Yeah, we're seeing an exact repeat of the first game, with Luca just going for that Protect on turn 1 and firing off a Snarl here. Arbin probably going to go along a similar path, probably just going to try and get an attack off with Indeedee. No need to redirect any of these attacks away from Dusclops. Psychic actually into the Rotom Protect. That's a bit different, but Dusclops, again, just able to get a free Trick Room off here.
Yeah, and Rotom able to gain a slight advantage compared with the position that it had previously, as I believe the Psychic was into Arcanine, so there was at least a little damage. But that's the one little difference here, and now we're kind of back to where we started. I think at this point, Arbin was trying to burn Rotom, and then began hazing the next turn. I think it wouldn't be shocking to me to see Haze come out a little bit earlier this turn, and I'm not sure, how much he ended up gaining from burning Rotom, but again, a very slow, passive position, and in these kinds of situations, you really need to make the most of what you're doing, the little steps that you're taking forward, even if it's not a KO or a leap and bound forward.
Yeah, it looks like to be a very slow beginning of the game as a Will-O-Wisp going to be going into that Rotom. Meanwhile, Indeedee just going to fire off another Psychic, get some more chip damage on that Arcanine. Rotom Thunderbolt does a decent amount of damage to that Indeedee. Meanwhile, Arcanine just going to go for yet another Snarl, going to decrease that Indeedee's special attack and the Dusclops' special attack, further decreasing Indeedee's damage output.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good play. Knowing that Haze is there, I think you definitely want to prioritize damage, and obviously it has to be onto Indeedee in some capacity, because otherwise it will just have the opportunity to follow me when you're trying to attack into Dusclops and prevent the Trick Room again here. Of course, knocking out Indeedee is the very epitome of a double-edged sword at this point in the game, because if you do knock it out, you give Arbin the opportunity to bring Rhyperior onto the field, which, as we saw, was kind of a turning point in Game 1.
Yeah, Arbin just going
to... hard switch.
Yeah, going to bring out his Dusclops in favor of that Rhyperior. Indeedee just going to go for the Follow Me just to redirect any potential super effective attack coming out from that Rotom. Rotom instead going to go for the Nasty Plot, which is actually pretty good here considering Dusclops and its Haze pressure have just evaporated from the field. Arcanine just going to go for yet another Snarl. Probably Indeedee is going to hang on. Oh, just kidding. It's not going to hang on. So Indeedee getting the free knockout. This is actually pretty huge for Arbin because now he gets a free switch in back to Dusclops. And now he can just go for that Bulldoze strategy into that Rhyperior with still 2 turns of Trick Room left to spare.
Yeah, we're in a pretty interesting position because Rotom actually did get to keep its Nasty Plot for now. And Arbin is going to have to choose whether or not he wants to allow that Nasty Plot to stay up or go for a Haze and forego Bulldoze for a turn, whether or not he wants to prioritize the offense over trying to mitigate the possibilities that Rotom brings to the table. But we are at kind of an interesting position. I can't remember whether or not Rhyperior had been intimidated the first time that it rockfalled Rotom, but it was able to take it in its Dynamax form. So going for something like a Dynamax as Rotom take the Rockfall into a Max Geyser could very quickly end the game by knocking out Rhyperior.
I believe it was at +1 because it had been intimidated and then the weakness policy proc. So Rotom,
so this could actually be close.
Yeah, Rotom's still able to take this at +1 in its Dynamax form. Of course, Rotom was still at a very good amount of HP.
It'll be at +2 this time.
Yeah, it's going to be a +2 max Rockfall at this point. We'll have to see if Rotom is going to be able to take it. We're going to see Dynamaxes coming out from both sides. Arbin's side going to Dynamax the Rhyperior. Meanwhile, Luca's side going to Dynamax what will likely be the Rotom Wash, trying to increase its defenses and hoping that it can take a potential boosted hit from this Rhyperior. Rotom, still at a healthy amount of HP, but like we just previously discussed, that damage calc we saw last turn was a +1 max Rockfall. But Dusclops going to forego the Bulldoze option, going to go for the Haze instead, so eliminating Rotom's special attack boost. Rhyperior just going to go for the max Rockfall into the Arcanine, so Arcanine just going to get rid of the Arcanine and leave Rotom, which means Rotom is going to get what will likely be a max Geyser into this Rhyperior, which we saw it was able to take.
Yeah.
Not well, but it was able to take it.
Right, it's going to be a little bit better, of course, with the sand up here, although it will be exchanged for the rain after this max Geyser does fire off here, but that's still a sizable amount of damage, and we're kind of back to the situation where Luca is going to be able to get himself out of Trick Room, presumably with the opportunity to go for a max guard, plus, bring whatever onto the field that he chooses in Arcanine's stead. But whether or not he's going to get enough offense generated to pressure Dusclops and prevent a second Trick Room is really going to be what this game comes down to. And it looks like Togekiss is his selection here to replace Arcanine. Yeah,
the interesting thing about that Max Geyser is that it actually does proc the Rhyperior's weakness policy, so Dusclops doesn't even have to. And like you mentioned, Brendan, that he is continuing, Luca seems to be continuing to ignore the Dusclops, and Dusclops just remaining at that healthy amount of HP means that it likely might be able to get off a second Trick Room later on in this game. And now Rhyperior still has one more turn of Trick Room to play around with, so it does have that boosted max Rockfall, and into something like Togekiss, which we saw doesn't have the ability to protect. Rhyperior is content just to potentially get another KO this turn.
Yeah, it's got a choice of, either dealing a heavy amount of damage into Rotom, which is kind of the key piece for Luca's game plan here, or just, wiping Togekiss off the field. I would think that you probably go for the Togekiss here, because Togekiss is kind of the only force that will allow enough chip damage into the Dusclops slot to potentially put it in knockout range for Rhyperior. But Torkoal is actually going to switch into the Dusclops slot.
Yeah, and we're going to see the Follow Me from Togekiss. Togekiss wanting to redirect the Max Rockfall away from that Rotom Wash, but at the cost of likely its entirety of its HP, as the Max Rockfall going into the Togekiss, going to easily wipe it off the face of the field here. Yeah, that boosted Max Rockfall, there was no chance that that super effective hit was going to be taken by that Togekiss. Setting back up the Sandstorm. Now Rotom going to be able to get another Max move off. Max Geyser, this is going to be going into... Yeah, at this point, even with the Sand up, Rhyperior not going to be able to take this Max Geyser. Rhyperior gets taken off the field, and now Arbin is left with his Dusclops and his Torkoal. Meanwhile, Luca is left with his Rotom, and a Pokemon we have yet to see.
Right, and I think this is actually a fine position for Luca when the dust settles here, when the sand clears. Because given that this is the last turn of Trick Room, and this is when Dusclops retakes the field, those are going to be the last two Pokemon for Arbin. He's stuck in the rain with Torkoal, and that's obviously not a great position for Torkoal. Much prefers the sun or even the sand or anything other than the rain, and with Conkeldurr being the last Pokemon on the field here, it looks like Luca's going to get the opportunity to... You know, it's at the point where maybe he doesn't even need to prevent Trick Room here because of the combination of Pokemon that he still has remaining.
Yeah, because not only is Torkoal in the rain, but also it still has to face down a Dynamax Rotom that still has a majority of its health remaining, and also a Conkeldurr. And I think Luca just showing off how important Rotom is in this matchup, because both of Arbin's Trick Room sweepers are weak to Rotom, so
like a forfeit.
Yeah, it does look like a forfeit, as Rotom is going to exit its Dynamax form, and we're going to be moving on to a Game 3 in this finals. Luca, like I was saying, is just showing the power of Rotom in this matchup just because of how volatile most of Arbin's offensive pressure is to it.
And I think that game plan looks a lot like the game plan that I expected him to go for in Game 1, but he did execute it a little bit better. I think the haze was something that kind of shook him a little bit, whereas he was potentially expecting to come out of Trick Room with a +4 or +6 Rotom and continuously snarl Indeedee. He was put in a position where all of a sudden Indeedee was continuing to do damage and Rotom was not boosted. Things were a little different this game. Rotom didn't have to take a max move from Rhyperior. It was able to get 2 Max Geysers onto it, so I think he really utilized that Rotom much more effectively, now having all the cards on the table.
Yeah, I was thinking that Arbin, since he was still up that game, maybe had a little bit of leeway to play more aggressively, trying to switch in that Rhyperior, but instead we saw that Rhyperior switch in for Dusclops, so he really wasn't able to get that weakness policy boost and have that sort of aggressive switch into Trick Room, anticipating Luca to play more passively. But I think Luca did that, played that really well. He was able to, you know, play passive to the point where he could, and also he could, play passive to the point where he could, to the point where he was able to mitigate Arbin's damage output under Trick Room and really deal with that Rhyperior. Even with the boost, Luca was able to really shut down that Rhyperior from doing a whole lot.
Yeah, and even though Rhyperior did
still got 2 KOs, though. It still got 2 KOs.
But it seemed like
not the important ones.
The end game was never really in doubt, even though you know, those 2 super effective rock falls were allowed to take KOs. And I think in the end, Conkeldurr is a much better 4th Pokemon for Luca to bring than Grimmsnarl was. We didn't see Grimmsnarl really do a whole lot of anything in Game 1. And it even came down to, because Rotom was still so healthy and in its Dynamax form, it didn't even really matter in Game 2 what the last Pokemon was, but definitely prefer the Conkeldurr bring to Grimmsnarl. One thing I wanted to touch on, Eric, and I heard you had mentioned it a couple times over the course of the day, is the way that Luca trained his Rotom. And you were saying a couple times over the course of the day that you much prefer the speedier variants of Rotom on the Nasty Plot set. And it really seems like the slow, bulky version all of a sudden is really putting in quite a bit of work for Luca here.
It is doing a lot by... Okay.
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 All right. So we're having
bit of an interesting dilemma we have here.
Some interesting technical difficulties. Only the best for Liberty Garden.
Only the best.
So what we're told is that we did hit the max number of games that are allowed in the tournament software. Is that what it is?
25.
So we actually have to set up a new tournament for them to play the 3rd game of finals. Okay.
So yeah, basically
Gotcha.
unlocking them and relocking them so we can reset the amount of games and so we can set them back up, and
Right.
then we'll have the game 3 of this final
Right.
set.
So we do have to go through the whole locking process to make sure there are no 5-move Volcaronas or things like that.
Well, wait, Brendan. Volcarona's not in the decks yet.
Not that we're implicating any players here.
You gotta wait for that second DLC, buddy.
And even Jake's here. I'm so glad I could make that reference. But yes, we're gonna just relock their boxes real quick. It looks like they're getting ready, just about ready to go here, and we will jump into a deciding game 3. So this was actually a big plan on our part to build up a little bit of suspense.
Oh yeah.
A little bit of time in between games 2 and 3 so that you guys could really contemplate the entirety of the weekend, the scope of all the games that we've seen on stream today. And now we are getting ready to go into game 3 of the finals of our second MSS of the weekend, the final game that will be brought to you by Liberty Garden this weekend.
What a brilliant segue, Brendan. That was perfectly timed. I got to give it to you, man. The really experienced commentary shining through.
I appreciate it.
A really brilliant segue into this final game. But yes, guys, this is going to be the final game for this doubleheader weekend hosted by Liberty Garden. The finals of the Sunday MSS between Luca Paz and Arbin Tumaneng. Luca going to once again lead with the Arcanine and Rotom Wash, and Dusclops and DD once again going to be the lead for Arbin. So these turn ones and leads looking very, very similar to one another yet again.
Right. I was kind of wondering whether or not Arbin would consider switching it up. Just seeing the way that, Luca had the best positions, until it wasn't in game 1, but definitely was controlling the position in game 2. But I think we were joking a little bit about it yesterday about whether or not Hatterene is a grass type just because it's using a grass type move.
Hey, the best. We said the best grass types in this format are Pokemon with Energy Ball.
Right.
Arcanine getting the Snarl off there once again, beginning the same.
No protect.
Yeah, no protect from Rotom this time. So Rotom perhaps going a bit on the more proactive side. Indeedee once again firing off a Psychic. Rotom just going to go for a Thunderbolt into the Indeedee, further knocking down its health. But Dusclops once again able to get a relatively free Trick Room on this turn 1.
Right, and Rotom going to take a 1-turn lead compared to where it's been over the rest of the set here. But of course, as we've been talking about, you have to be very careful about when it is that Indeedee gets knocked out, because if you knock it out and you give Rhyperior or Torkoal too many turns in Trick Room, that's exactly what Arbin is playing towards, which is why, Indeedee is such a unique Pokemon in that sense. But as much as it's, your goal is to take knockouts, the timing has to be very precise. And we saw, Luca, even though it looked like he was doing well with the timing, still had to give up 2 knockouts to that Rhyperior.
Once again, another very similar turn. We have Dusclops going for the Will-O-Wisp. Meanwhile, Indeedee going for a Psychic. I feel like I'm watching the same game again, but now Rotom this time going for a Nasty Plot on turn 2. Going to be sharply boosting its special attack stat. Arcanine going to be decreasing some special attack stats with that Snarl on the Indeedee, getting some chip damage, getting really close to knocking it out. Indeedee surviving on a sliver. Meanwhile, Dusclops not taking a whole lot of damage, just getting slowly chipped away.
Yeah, and this next Snarl, I believe, based on what we saw in game 2, will be enough to knock it out. I think I disagree with the targeting that Arbin is going with here. He's fired 2 Psychics into Arcanine, which is all well and good to get the chip damage, but I think it would have been really important for him to try and get damage onto the Rotom so that it would have put it into a +2 max Rockfall range later in the game. And now that we're going to get a switch up from both sides here.
Yeah, we're switching Pokemon on both sides. Arcanine switching out for that Togekiss, and Rhyperior coming in for the Indeedee. The Haze coming out from the Dusclops, removing the special attack boost on that Rotom Wash, and Rotom firing a Thunderbolt into that Rhyperior. Brilliant switch by Arbin there, soaking up that Thunderbolt.
Yeah, and he was able to get his Rhyperior in for free. But Luca, being able to preserve Arcanine means he can do a lot more of the plays that he was trying to make in game 1, where he was able to switch it in, I think twice safely and get those Intimidates down onto Rhyperior, and of course didn't get the opportunity to do that in game 2 because it was knocked out very early. But here is Intimidate number 1, which makes Rotom much safer in the face of Rhyperior when it's facing down those big max Rockfalls. Yeah,
Arcanine being able to get that Intimidate in and saving it for in the back is huge, because like you said, he was able to pivot it in and out, and Arcanine just having that little bit of HP is still critical to Luca's game plan here. But the Dynamax finally coming out from Arbin's side, going to be once again that Rhyperior, boosting its bulk to a absurd level, and likely to boost its bulk even more with that max Rockfall, potentially setting up that Sandstorm, which will allow it to take a Max Geyser from that Rotom and potentially a Bulldoze from Dusclops if Arbin decides he wants to go more on the proactive end, which he can because now he does have both of these Pokemon in the ideal Trick Room scenario. But we still have, well, I guess now since he has been intimidated, we already know the calc for Max Rockfall into that Rotom not going to be quite enough to take it out. But on the opposite end of that, Rotom's Max Geyser not going to be able to take out Rhyperior, especially after that Max Rockfall sets up the Sandstorm. But Bulldoze going into that Rhyperior going to do minuscule amount of damage, but of course meant to activate the weakness policy.
And Berry Proc.
Yes, and also the Arcanine's Berry, which it did last game too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's always funny to see those little bits of damage be the interaction that really seals it. Like we saw very early on stream today, Patrick knock out his own Duraludon with the Bulldoze. When those damage, the amount of damage being done is so negligible, but it does, you know, hit that threshold for something that needs to happen. And Arcanine is the sacrifice here to the first Rockfall. And presumably Luca is going to go back to that Togekiss, which is kind of you know, the game plan that he's been executing over the course of this set so far. And finally, the Geyser is going to do, you know, a predetermined amount of damage that we've seen a couple times this set into that Rhyperior as the rain goes up.
Yeah, Arbin able to get that Max Rockfall into the Arcanine, limiting it to just a single switch in, so Rhyperior will be remaining at that single stage of boosted attack. Of course, if Dusclops decides it wants to haze all those boosts away, or when Rhyperior eventually gets knocked out. Togekiss coming in for that Arcanine, and I believe we do have 2 turns of Trick Room left for Arbin, 2 or 3, I'm not sure.
I think it's 2.
I want to say 2, so yeah. Arbin still has, you know, a couple turns of Trick Room. Oh, it is the last turn, actually. Okay, this Trick Room has been going by quickly. There's been so much happening, but yeah, Luca just going to withdraw his Togekiss here and go into that Conkeldurr. So
oh, that's a good play.
Yeah, Conkeldurr.
That's a really good play.
Yeah, Conkeldurr switching out that Togekiss for Conkeldurr so it can potentially take this oh, just kidding. This Max Rockfall is going into the Rotom here. Going to be doing a significant chunk of damage, not quite enough for the knockout, but it is going to be resetting the Sandstorm. However, I think at this point the Sandstorm not going to be enough to save Rhyperior from another Max Geyser, as this Max Rockfall does make Rotom recover a bit of its health here.
Oh, and he gets the Will-O-Wisp
into the Conkeldurr. What a play from Luca.
Excellent.
Saving the Togekiss, but also smartly switching in the Conkeldurr to the Will-O-Wisp, which is actually something Conkeldurr doesn't mind thanks to that Guts ability. And that Max Geyser from Luca knocking out the Rhyperior, and by far one of the biggest threats on Arbin's team to Luca.
That's incredibly well done. And now
fantastic play.
We're gonna get into
fantastic.
A little bit different, a lot different actually, I think, than some of the other situations we've seen, because Indeedee is still alive.
Yeah.
So it will potentially get the opportunity to come back onto the field here and use a Follow Me to allow a second Trick Room. But I think that this position with Conk on the field is much better in the sense that it generates more offense. We talked about this in Game 1 to potentially pressure Dusclops off of setting Trick Room again, although I think it might be a little tough to do that here.
Yeah, with Indeedee coming back in, even if Dusclops does get the second Trick Room off, we've seen how just how ineffective something like Torkoal can be against this Rotom Wash, which still has a really decent amount of HP left and still has one more turn of Dynamax to play with. So if, you know, Arbin wants to this turn, he can Follow Me with the Indeedee and sacrifice it potentially just to get that second Trick Room up. But yeah, Conkeldurr just going to switch it out here. Luca recognizing that it is an important Pokemon to still keep in this matchup. Togekiss coming back in. Indeedee not going to go for the Follow Me. Yeah, just goes for the Psychic into the Togekiss. Going to do about 25%. Rotom just going to go for the Max Lightning into the Indeedee, getting that knockout. But Dusclops, as we've seen Dusclops do all tournament, it's not taking a lot of damage this turn, which means Trick Room likely going back up.
Yeah, it's not taking any damage this turn, so I believe that makes Trick Room pretty free. And it is going to be Torkoal versus 3. You know, Dusclops is there in spirit, but how much it's really doing is kind of up in the air, which is, you know, one of the things we talked about, you know, when it's okay to ignore Dusclops. This is one of the situations where you ignore Dusclops aggressively and make sure that you are getting, it's
actually Hatterene.
Okay, that's interesting.
Okay.
You know, the play to go for a Max Lightning as the last turn of his Dynamax there looks so much better now, not having to deal with those boosted Psychics from Hatterene. that's either big brain or just a really nice coincidence.
Yeah, really nice coincidence. It was like, oh, okay, now I don't have to deal with Hatterene and the boosted Psychics under the Psychic terrain. But Luca also has to be a little bit cautious here, considering Hatterene has a much more favorable matchup against Pokemon like Rotom and Conkeldurr, especially since Hatterene will definitely outspeed both of them, considering how slow it is. And Rotom, recognizing that threat, is going to go for the Protect here. Meanwhile, Dusclop's going to do basically all it can do in this situation, just keep firing off Will-O-Wisp as its main means of quote-unquote damage output. But meanwhile, Hatterene just content to go for a Dazzling Gleam here, just going to potentially ignore a Follow Me that could have come out. Yeah, that's a Life Orb Hatterene, so definitely a potent damage dealer here as the Air Slash from Togekiss is going to get a critical hit, going to be taking away a lot of Hatterene's health there. Yeah,
but this is definitely looking like a good position for Arbin. Having Hatterene in the back instead of Torkoal, like you said, Eric, just really flips the matchup because Conkeldurr, doesn't love to face Torkoal in Trick Room, but it can actually, do anything at all. And of course, Hatterene, being the Fairy Psychic type that it is one of the most optimal Pokemon that you could bring to try and face down Conkeldurr here. So Luca is going to have to do some really fancy footwork to try and get out of Trick Room here, because it seems like he's going to take 2 knockouts with a Dazzling Gleam, and it's going to be Conkeldurr against the Fairy Psychic type. Yeah, unfortunately, Dusclops pretty much has run out of usefulness at this point.
Is taking this? I don't think so. Yeah, the Dazzling Gleam is just able to pick up the knockout on both Togekiss and the Rotom. So Luca going to be down to his Conkeldurr, which is going to be his last Pokemon. Meanwhile, Arbin still has his Dusclops and his Hatterene, but I think... I don't know if Conkeldurr will be able to do this. I don't think it will be able to do this. Even if it's holding like an Assault Vest, it's still a lot of damage. And all of a sudden, Arbin can taste it. This really seemed like this was Torkoal's game to lose, and all of a sudden, Torkoal was on the bench. It didn't even come, and now Hatterene is going to get the opportunity to try and finish this game with a Psychic or with a Dazzling Gleam. Its choice of move. It wants to go for the Grass move. It could probably even do that, too, to really seal the game, but such a smart adjustment from Arbin and really hiding that Hatterene until the last minute. I think in Game 2 and Game 1, he had been trying to switch Torkoal onto the field. That's going to be and the Psychic is going to seal it for Arbin, and he will take the win here. Yeah, Arbin finally getting that mid-season showdown crown after battling all the way to the finals yesterday and getting all the way back with the very same team that got him there yesterday. What a set, honestly. What a set. RTO here. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's RTO. Hashtag that's my TO. But not my TO, but somebody else's TO. That was just such a smart adjustment, because I think, I felt this way, at least. I'm not sure how you felt. But Luca had made all the plays to win the end game. If it was Torkoal in the back. Yeah. If it was Torkoal in the back, he had set himself up perfectly. But instead, it was Hatterene, which is such a smart adjustment by Arbin, and he was obviously able to take on Conkeldurr very effectively, thanks to the very positive type matchup there, and just really smart. We saw him get into the finals yesterday, and he was not going to be denied today. So a really strong showing by Arbin with a first and a second at 2 of the biggest mid-season showdowns, definitely this season and even in the history of VGC. Yeah, really, honestly, 2 stacked tournaments, and Arbin was able to really make a statement in both of these tournaments. We're sitting here as casters, we're recognizing that, yeah, this Rotom is really the biggest threat on the field. It's like, oh, yeah, Torkoal, Luca has had this and playing the perfect endgame, but Hatterene actually being the Pokemon in the back. Usually with these Indeedee and Hatterene teams, you usually see Hatterene as the lead, usually the one trying to set up the Trick Room, but Hatterene actually serving as the perfect Trick Room closer with that late game sweep, just showing actually how powerful Hatterene is as an attacker. Yeah, very, very intelligent adjustment by Arbin. Congratulations to him. We will be right back with an interview with our Midseason Showdown champion and a show to wrap up the events of today. Brendan, it's been a pleasure. A very, very high-level sets of Pokemon, exciting sets of Pokemon. It was a great top cut. It was a fantastic top cut. Even on the sidelines, I was just amazed with how much high-level competition we've been seeing. There's a little blip in the middle there, but overall, yeah, we don't talk about that second round of top 4. We don't talk about that. But yeah, congratulations to Arbin. We're going to bring him on for a winner's interview, and we will be right back with just that.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am here with your finals winner, Arbin, also known as June. I know I'll probably be calling you Arbin, as that's what we've been saying earlier.
No problem.
First off, I want to say congrats.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Not only the win today, but second place yesterday. So that is 82 championship points that you just racked up for yourself. So first of all, talk me through how you're feeling right now.
I'm just ecstatic. I finally won. Like, the last event that I won was like Apex 2014. That wasn't even like an official event. That was a grassroots event. I'm just so happy. And the other thing, so Amotos, it's a group of friends that like started a long time ago, and we always have this curse where if one of us gets into finals, we're just destined for second place.
Curse is broken now, though.
I know, I can't believe it. Well, it was broken before, but it's just a really, really high possibility. I'm just happy I was able to finally defeat it after losing to James Evans yesterday.
Yeah, and I mean, I think James Evans not making cut today might have been a little bit of a savior for you, probably helped you be a little less worried about your results today.
I know, I feel bad. Well, I know that James is an amazing player, but I was just happy when he wasn't in cut because he was one of my only 2 losses this whole weekend.
I'm sure. And I mean, I think you played Paul Chua in?
Yeah, I played Paul Chua.
Yeah, and that is a crazy tough match. Paul Chua, of course, having an insane run today.
Yeah, he did. I played him round 6, and it was like close to the wire too.
Yeah.
Like this match.
You had a ton of insane games today that were awesome for us to watch. I know all the commentators were thrilled with everything that you brought on. A couple questions too about that game I want to talk to. We didn't really get to see too much of that Indeedee having room service on stream, so that I thought was interesting. So what was your choice behind that?
So, okay, so the team has a lot of trouble against Imprisoned Chandelier.
Really?
Okay, so one of my secret moves on Indeedee, which I didn't get to use that often, but it's a really fun move, Imprison.
Right.
So I imprison their imprison, and then, okay, so, well, what is it going to do? It can't imprison my Trick Room anymore because their imprison has been imprisoned, and then what I'll do next turn is I will double target the Chandelier, hopefully KO it or force them to like, okay, Chandelier has to waste another turn setting up Trick Room, and it was like an amazing tech in practice. I didn't get to use it a lot. It was only like to imprison and follow me, which was pretty neat and cool. I actually did that my top 8 game yesterday.
Really? Yeah, I know. I only saw Imprison once on stream today. Not a move I really think of as often as VGC viable, but it's interesting to see it today and see how the meta kind of evolves. How important for you was it in that first game, getting that Trick Room up again, or the second game, getting that Trick Room up again to be able to move your game plan forward?
So, wait, the game 2 where I had to set up Trick Room once more.
Yes.
It was just very important because my whole team is just hard Trick Room. I need Trick Room to win. If it gets stopped, then I lose. My sweepers just get damaged. Like, my Torkoal will not get the max damage from Eruption. My Rhyperior is prone to getting KO'd or just wear down before it's even attacked. And Indeedee both Indeedee and Hatterene as well. Like, if I didn't have Trick Room up against Luca that last game, if I wasn't able to get that out, there was like, what Conkeldurr could have just rock slided me, my Hatterene to feign it and be like, well, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that Hatterene too, what was your choice in bringing that game 3? Because Luca had all the tools to beat a Torkoal if you had a Torkoal in the back, but keeping that Hatterene a secret. So talk me through that a little bit as well.
So I figured that, okay, well, I figured at the end of game 2, I was like, this is very troublesome. He's going to bring Conk again. I can feel it over the Grimmsnarl. So I was like, And then I was like, oh, okay, what if I use Hatterene? Hatterene can, like, Psychic can KO the Conk. It has spread Dazzlingly, which did a lot of damage. And so I was like, well, okay, what do I replace? Rhyperior or Torkoal? I did like, but in the end, I decided, like, okay, I'll go Torkoal because Rotom Wash, his Rotom Wash was a huge problem for me for how bulky it was, and he would always Dynamax it in our sets. Like, I played him in round 7, and it was just very hard to take down. So in this set, I was like, I really needed a good answer for it. I feel like, okay, if I wear it down with Rhyperior and I can bring Hatterene to sweep up the game, I think I got this.
That is, I mean, again, we were all pretty shocked when we saw it. I know I was expecting Luca to almost kind of wrap up that game 3, assuming you had that Torkoal in the back. Seeing a game that ended up kind of being similar, you guys using those similar leads, the 3 games, but you making the adjustments that were basically a secret adjustment that we didn't know really till the end. We found out, of course, the same time Luca did. I think we're going to pretty much wrap it here. I want you to give out any shout-outs that you need to plug yourself a little bit at all so people know where to find you, where to find your tournaments and everything like that.
Okay, so I want to shout out Alphonse Gade and Jack Aquino because they were my team building group for this tournament. And I explained before in the previous interview, like, their teams helped build what my team was and how the team I used over the weekend for this great victory. I also want to shout out Rutgers Pokémon because, go to our tournaments. I'm also a tournament organizer.
Yeah, we had you on earlier,
Yeah, follow me, Cypher as a kid, and
That's it. That's all you got.
Okay. My best friends, Stephen Levine, Bart Calera, Reggie Williams, and Kyle Burns. They always supported me throughout my whole life. Shout outs to Gio. Gio's just an awesome person. I love him. Nick Borgie as well. And just like all of this community for shouting, that's my TO, that's my TO. I just feel I just enjoy all this love that this community has given me, and I just want to thank them all for their support.
You have had an incredible amount of support this weekend, and we sure are psyched for you having such incredible finishes in both of these two massive, basically regionals. I mean, you can honestly write two regional finals on your resume, I'm sure. All right, that is going to do it for us, guys. I will be back with the closing show, and that will be pretty much it for this Liberty Garden thing. We are so proud of you. Congrats on your win and your second place. We will be back very soon with the post show, so stay tuned.
Maeve's leading.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the post show. I am here with the entire Liberty Garden team who has been bringing you fantastic matches this entire weekend. Minus Regina. And Andrew, you only saw a little bit briefly, but he has been really the producer behind the stream. He has been absolutely incredible. We just want to say thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for all this great support, all the turnout that we've had for these weekends, bringing Liberty Garden back after the 2-year hiatus, and having such an incredible turnout, so much support. Everybody here has been so gracious, and that is just really where I want to start off. But if either of you two have anything you need to say first, please feel free.
I got nothing to say because Andrew's undefeated on stream and I am not. So let's kick it to Andrew.
Well, if I can just take a few moments to say before I kind of kick it to everybody else is when we all came together to plan this, I saw so much potential in what this could be, and I was not let down this weekend. Everybody worked so hard. We have such a talented group of people between Jen and all the casters, and I like to think I'm pretty okay myself. But this,
I guess so.
This is what I wanted Pokemon tournaments to be when I got involved in this sort of thing, and I'm glad to kind of see it all come to fruition. And I hope that we, as a group, get to bring you guys this content in the future, because I think it's the content that we want to make, and it's the content you guys deserve.
Yeah, honestly, I'm just so proud of everybody. Like what you guys see in chat when you're watching is 2 days of commentary and work in production and everything. But what these 2 days really have been months of preparation and practice, long Discord calls trying to figure out how to pronounce Pokemon, figuring out what Max Wormwood does compared to Max.
We still haven't decided how to pronounce half the Pokemon.
Yeah.
We're working on that.
Shout outs to Regina telling us it's more Pecco and not more Pico.
With a whole explanation I could not remember.
Yeah.
Pecco, it's hungry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. I like more Pico anyway. Yeah, so I'm just proud of how everything turned out. We had so many lofty goals when this first started of what we wanted to accomplish, and especially with the analyst lounge that we have here. I think things really worked out this weekend, and I'm overall very proud of what we were able to accomplish here in my lovely home state of New Jersey. Suck it, Brendan.
Oh, I feel left out now, but it's okay. No, I think another thing, too, for me that was awesome was even just being able to go to Jen and be like, Jen, can we do caster battles during the extended lunch round? And we had so much fun. I know watching Brendan completely hacks out Justin yesterday, absolutely wiped the floor with Justin, of course showing everyone that Boston is so important and so much better in so many ways. That, I think, was so much fun to me, being able to do the caster battle with Regina, who, of course, Regina had to get on a flight back to the West Coast, and we miss her dearly already. But it was just such a blast being able to commentate something for fun, have a little bit more fun with it, and just being able to go to Jen and be like, can we do this? And even her last minute being like, sure, why not? And having that sort of flexibility working with Jen, especially for me, this being my very first Liberty Garden event, has been kind of a dream come true. And I love working with all you guys, and you guys have all accepted me in a really sweet and loving way that is also a little bit full of torment. Yeah, begrudgingly. You'll probably never see me again, so it's like totally fine. Oh my goodness.
Anybody
What a
else
weekend,
have any
man.
kind of thoughts? Yeah.
What a
I'm
weekend.
tired.
Again, congrats to Arbin. Arbin having that great weekend. James, of course, James Evans winning yesterday. Arbin winning today and coming in second yesterday.
And we're in like round 5 or round 6 in the PC already.
I know.
Right?
That
So that's
PC only
moving
has
along.
one more round of best of one Swiss, and then it'll be a top cut with top 8. And that is crazy. Today really flew by. I'm sure we all absolutely. I mean, you guys killed it on production. The staff here, all the TOs, the head judges. I know we have Kyle and Zach and NK and
Jim,
everybody who just absolutely killed it out there while we were in here trying to do everything we needed to do, but they made it so that it was possible for us.
How about all the new players, Maeve?
Oh
We've had
my
so many,
goodness.
oh, I just started in January. Oh, I started in 2019. Or, oh, this is my first event, and I'm in Top Cut
Day
or
one
whatever.
was a lot like that. I feel like
it's awesome to have
like,
so many new faces.
So many people came on and said, "Oh yeah, this is my first tournament," or I've done a couple before. This is my first year. It's really incredible.
It's really the same advantage that we had when we were coming up through the scene in 2014, 2015, 2016 when Jen started up Liberty Garden, working with other tournament organizers in the area to make sure we had, adequate amounts of locals that would prepare us for the regional and national level. So I feel like this could be the resurgence or the abundance of tournaments within Tri-State that we really need to go back to those glory days of Generation 6 VGC.
You call Generation 6 glory days?
Oh, man, I had so much fun in,
Did you forget about Xerneas?
Smeargle and Kang
Never
Heat Ran matchups. I had so much fun.
I think one other thing, too, that we really need to address is a massive thank you to Jen.
Yeah!
Jen has been incredible. We love you. Jen has put on an amazing event that coming back after, since 2017, bringing on, such an all-star cast, putting on such an all-star event. Really, I've had so many people either I've seen, writing either to Jen or just come up and be like, this has been one of the most well-run, smoothest double headers that I've ever played at. And that, I think, is a compliment in and of itself, even though it seems a little bit bleh, like Jen just made the face of. So
who but Jen would be mad enough to run a double header?
Oh my gosh, right?
Jen's like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to do it big. I'm going to go as hard as I can in one single week.
Just remember.
Straight jacket on reserve for me.
Yeah.
Straight jacket for Jen.
Absolute mad lad.
Just remember the new slogan, Liberty Garden. It's not a boulder, it's a rock.
Yeah. We'll be bringing Jen back to the hospital after this, guys, I promise.
Liberty Garden. Jen doesn't need to sleep.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I do think that is going to do it from all of us behind the casting desk and production, and Jen, who is also currently behind casting desk right now. We want to give you the biggest thank you we can for all of the support this weekend. I'm speechless.
Just speechless.
I'm speechless.
And thank everybody at home for watching all weekend. Thanks to everybody who, retweeted for the stream, everybody, who Wolf for rating us at one point. And again, huge shout out to A-Drive and all of his people.
Happy birthday to A-Drive.
Happy birthday to A-Drive. Yeah, and I think shout out to Morpeko and shout out to the Liberty Garden Pikachu.
There, we found him. We were worried. Turns out I had him in my house the entire time.
Joe's been holding him hostage.
With that, though, I think we should end it here. I'd also like to take note, subscribe if you feel like it.
Yeah, please subscribe. Subscriptions, yeah.
It took a lot to set this up, these walls, mostly. Yes. Shout outs to Soundproof.
Yeah.
Yep, shout outs to Soundproof for their bi-weekly podcast. Talk about Twitch Prime from Eric there.
Yeah, did you guys know if you had Twitch Prime, you can use that Twitch Prime subscription once a month on any streamer you choose for free. No cost to you. You get all access to all emotes, any sub perks that any stream will have, and it goes to supporting your favorite content creators.
And you get a Clefairy emote. That was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
That was it.
I try.
And also, use your Twitch Prime on Liberty Garden, but follow me on YouTube, Andy Davis. Yeah. If you
and with that.
Whoa. If you like nonsense, yeah.
All right, guys. Again, like I said earlier, 5 minutes ago before we got derailed, that is going to do it for us. I do appreciate everybody coming out and supporting us, so please have a good weekend. Have a happy President's Day. We will see you as soon as we can with the next Liberty Garden event.
Liberty Garden's back!
Have a good one, guys.